Hello. In the last video we looked at the coronation of Harold Godwinson in 1066 in the newly built Westminster Abbey, setting the trend for every coronation since. The area we now know as Westminster became a place of special royal significance in the 1040s when Edward the Confessor chose to build a palace alongside an existing Benedictine abbey and to add a church, the Westminster, that would become the monarch's personal place of worship. The original state entrance was in the north transept, closest to the royal palace. A rebuild of Edward the Confessor's Norman Romanesque church, possibly just the east end, in the latest Gothic architectural style, was begun by the Abbey community around 1220. As a boy king, Henry III laid the foundation stone for a lady chapel. In 1245, the adult Henry took personal control of the project, initiating a much more radical makeover, bringing in the best masons from England and beyond. In overall charge was a master mason from Reims called Henry. Reims Cathedral was, of course, where the kings of France were crowned. Also on the payroll were Richard of Paris, Peter of Rome, Peter of Spain, John the Norman, Roger of Canterbury, Roger of Luton, John of Gloucester and John of Beverley. With the advantage of a renewed royal patronage and finance, the new Westminster Abbey was consecrated on the 13th of October 1269. Henry III held Edward the Confessor particularly high in his devotions, and 13th of October replaced the 5th of January, the anniversary of his death, as Edward's principal feast day. Edward had been canonised in 1161 and his body translated to a new shrine in the Abbey in 1163 in a service conducted by Thomas Becket as Archbishop of Canterbury. Henry's veneration of St Edward partly motivated his rebuilding, and a key focus of the new abbey was a magnificent shrine for Edward in the retro choir behind the high altar, a shrine decorated with coloured marble, porphyry and glittering mosaics by craftsmen from Italy led by Pietro di Odorizio. A Latin inscription read, "In the 1000th year of the Lord, with the 70th and twice 100th, with the 10th, more or less complete, this work was made, which Peter the Roman citizen brought to completion. O man, if you wish to know the cause, the king was Henry, the friend of the present saint." The shrine incorporated body-side niches, inside which pilgrims could kneel in order to be as close as possible to the saint's remains. Edward's head was carefully positioned at the apex of a triangle, with the hypotenuse marking the baseline of the transepts. From this central point, radiating chapels are generated. Henry III's own tomb would later be placed alongside Edward's shrine. Henry's Westminster Abbey was designed not only to serve as the monarch's personal church and a setting for coronations, it was also intended as a royal mausoleum to be filled with grandiose monuments, a place of veneration reflecting the charisma of kingship. Where previously royal burials had taken place in different locations, Henry's grandfather, Henry II, and his uncle, Richard I in Fontevraud Abbey in Anjou, his father, King John at Worcester, now there was a dedicated place of reverence, a visible reinforcement of the dynastic right of succession. To contribute to the power of kingship and the right to exercise authority by demonstrable continuity, Henry's son, Edward I, commissioned the first life-size bronze effigy produced in England to be put on his father's tomb. Beyond honouring and commemorating ancestors, such acts sow the seeds of lineage, reinforcing the idea of a royal bloodline, a dynasty for whom to rule is a birthright. Richard III, we now know, was unceremoniously and hurriedly buried in a shallow unmarked grave at Greyfriars in Leicester, Westminster Abbey being deemed inappropriate for a man his successor Henry VII claimed was an illegitimate monarch. Henry added a splendid royal chapel to emphasise his own rather doubtful right to the throne, establishing a direct personal connection to Westminster Abbey. The walls and windows of his chapel are badged with the Tudor rose and portcullis insignia. Grand tombs were commissioned from Florentine sculptor Pietro Terraggiano for Henry's mother, Lady Margaret Beaufort, and for Henry himself and his wife Elizabeth of York. The coronation chair, also known as St Edward's or King Edward's chair, decorated with foliage, birds, bronze fittings and gold leaf, now rather worn and disfigured by graffiti, was made for Edward I in 1301. Its most famous feature was the Stone of Scone, or Stone of Destiny, a block of red sandstone with a roughly incised cross on one side, set beneath a seat when a wooden platform was added in the 17th century. Earlier monarchs sat directly on the stone. This is a replica at Scone. Legends stretching back to the biblical story of Jacob in the book of Genesis attached to the stone. Irish kings had been crowned on the stone on the hill of Tara, where it was claimed the stone would murmur if the claimant was genuine and remain silent if a usurper. It was supposedly taken to Scotland in the late 5th century by Fergus the Great, who ruled northeast Ulster and the mini-kingdom of Dalriata in western Scotland. Kenneth I, King of the Picts, deposited it in Scone Abbey, Perthshire in 848, from where it was taken to nearby Moot Hill for the coronation of Scottish kings. It was captured by Edward I and taken to Westminster in 1296, evidence of how these trappings become important symbols in proclaiming legitimacy. A point of contention between England and Scotland ever since, it was stolen by a group of Scottish students on Christmas Day 1950, prompting a major search operation. Subsequently recovered in 2 pieces, it was repaired and restored to Westminster Abbey 4 months later. The stone was returned to Scotland in 1996 to be kept in between coronations at Edinburgh Castle. The religious community at Westminster was dissolved in 1540. The 1560 Act of Supremacy formally removed the abbey from the Catholic hierarchy, and it was redesignated the Collegiate Church of St Peter, Westminster, a royal peculiar under the jurisdiction of the reigning monarch and not within the control of a bishop or governed by any diocese of the Church of England. Next time, staying at Westminster, I'm going to look at Westminster Palace and its associated buildings and what they say about royal status and power. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.